thank you so much for housing us and hosting us in your humble abode here.
You're quite welcome.
How do you, so how old are you?
I am 75 years old.
What's the secret? How do you stay so young?
I believe my family has a little genetics of age. Like my grandmother was, I guess she was like 97 when she died, and my grandpa was like 94. So it kind of runs in the family. We're very hardy people, and we're fishermen, and I've got the constitution of a mule.
You're very active too. That probably plays a lot.
Very active. I do a lot of kayaking. I'm very physical, very physical. I like hard work. I like outside work. I like being outside. Matter of fact, normally if I'm not at the computer, I'm outside.
Well, I first heard your name. I saw your name in newspapers around the beginning of last year, whenever the TCEQ was working on legislation around the March timeframe.
Right.
I think they were gonna put in writing to not allow any plastic waste whatsoever.
That's true.
And then I also spoke to Jace Tunnel from the Naval Patrol around that time. So that's how I was introduced to you. But for folks who don't know you, can you introduce yourself? And
Diane Wilson, fourth generation fisherwoman, shrimp boat captain. Also a writer. I've written 3 books. I've got 5 kids. I have been a shrimper, a crabber, a net builder, working at fish houses, oystering, trot lining. I've done it all, and I've been a environmental activist for 35 years, and I've been fighting Formosa Plastics in particular for 35 years. So I'm kind of known as a hellraiser.
Well, the title that I saw was Unreasonable Woman.
Unreasonable.
Is that from the Formosa stuff?
Very unreasonable. Actually, I wrote my first book called Unreasonable Woman, and it's true. It's my philosophy. I think we're too well behaved. I think we have these industry out there, and they end up destroying the bays and communities and fisheries, and we're supposed to say, pretty please, and will you give us this small part per million, or please just do a little bit more monitoring. And it's like, no. You
know, I never realized when I started reading about you that you've been doing or been a part of environmental activism for 30 years. I didn't realize it was that long.
35 years, since 1989. Actually, the reason why I started, I was working at a fish house, matter of fact, Froggy Shrimp House, and it was the first time the toxic release inventory, the community right to know law that was passed. It was the first time industry in the United States had to report their emissions from their smokestacks out through their wastewater, trucking, injection wells, landfills. And this county, which is pretty darn small, pretty rural, at the time it probably had 15,000 in the entire county. We were the number 1 county in the nation for toxic disposal. We had half the waste generated in the state of Texas.
Wow.
Right here.
What was the waste exactly?
It was Alcoa in their bauxite refinery, and it is still sitting there. God knows, yeah.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Signature Touch. Signature Touch is veteran owned and operated, and it was started by my wife and myself with a mission to provide the highest quality all-natural skincare products made from ethically sourced ingredients. We have body butters, lip balms, and deodorants. And the best part is you could use it on yourself, and they're safe for everyone in the family, including your children. My wife's favorite body butter is Bernilla. It's made with bergamot and vanilla botanical extract. People say it smells like key lime pie. My favorite is Lavensense. It's made with lavender essential oil and frankincense. It makes your skin feel so nourished, but it's also good on bug bites and rashes. Check us out today. The website is oursignaturetouch.com. Use code JLA to receive 10% off your first purchase. The website, it's oursignaturetouch.com. So you're involved in a lot of different types of pollutions. It's not just plastic.
Right. Matter of fact, because we got Alcoa, and they're known for their, it's one of the biggest underwater Superfund sites in the country, and the mercury and the bauxite and the red mud, and then you've got Union Carbide. It used to be Union Carbide, and now it's Dow. And so I have did actions against Union Carbide on their benzene landfills. I've did actions against DuPont on their injection wells, and so I've did a lot of stuff constantly with Formosa. I guess in 1989 when I started was when Formosa did the biggest chemical expansion Texas ever had, 1989. Uh-huh. And it just really kind of accidentally fell in my lap because we were number one in the county. And all I did was ask for a little meeting in Seadrift. Was it 1,000 people in Seadrift? A little meeting. I've never had a meeting before. People are not going to believe this, but I am a real introvert, and I don't like talking, and I'm not comfortable around crowds. And I was asking for a meeting, and it was like a snowball rolling to hell is what it was like. Wow. And I immediately got backlash. They were... I remember the bank president came down to Fish House and wanted to know if I was a renegade environmental group fixing to roast industry alive. And it was like, this was day one of asking for a meeting. And it just snowballed all the way from there. And it's been pretty much going on for 35 years. It has not stopped. It's like a full-time occupation.
When was your first discovery of plastic pellets?
Oh, the plastic. Well, the thing is, I always, when I knew Formosa, got to know Formosa, I always knew about the powder, the PVC powder, since, and I've got documentation on this since, I have got like 1985 letters from citizens in Point Comfort, writing to the Texas Air Control Board at that time. Now it's TCEQ, and but back then it was the Texas Water Commission and the Texas Air Control Board. And so I've got these letters where these citizens and said, "Will you please get Formosa to stop putting this powder?" And it was all over the community. All over the community. It was in their yards. It was on the swimming pools. It was on their cars. It was everywhere. And I dare say it's still the case. So that was around 1985. And when I started in 1989, I immediately got wind from citizens as the powder was everywhere. And it wasn't just the citizens I was talking to, it was the workers. Now, see, I think most people will find that real unusual because you would think a woman who's a commercial fisherwoman and she's an activist is like industry workers are not want to talk to her. But eventually, when you have a company It's not unionized, so there's no worker support. There's no worker protection, so they can't go to the company or they will be fired. They can't go to the DAs or the mayors, or they can't go to the sheriff's department, because either they're getting contracts or they're getting computer systems or new police cars, or there's a lot of that goes on. So they can't go to the state environmental agency in Corpus, because I went to the Corpus Christi division and was going through their files. And I had these two investigators. They watched me like half a day while I was going through files. And then pretty soon they said, come here. And they took me to a file in the back room, pulled it out, and said, this shows extensive groundwater contamination underneath Formosa. It had 13 of the 14 priority pollutants. It was extensive, about as high as you can get. And they said, it's going nowhere. It's bottleneck. And they said, we don't even want to know what's going on here. They said, you do something with it.
Wow.
So that's a state environmental agency. And I took it to EPA criminal investigators, and pretty much the criminal investigators turned off their recorder and said, this is going to go nowhere. You take care of it yourself.
Oh, why?
I think because, one, you look at the whole state of Texas, and I don't care who gives me this bull that, all these agencies and all of these politicians are, they're doing their job, and the mayors and all. Bull. I think it's a bunch of bull. And I think it's very political. It's very industry friendly. They, they're down on regulations. It's like too many regulations. And so, pretty much you don't have, it's kind of like when they were trying to pass the regulations for plastic, on changing that. I mean, it's politics.
Right.
And it's very industry friendly. So basically, the workers could only eventually come to me. And they eventually came to me. And generally, they were always scared. They were always carrying a gun, and they had documents.
What kind of documents would they give you?
Oh, well, I had some pretty well. For one, I'll tell you one of the documents I had. And he was a shift. I guess he was the supervisor of the security at Formosa, and a job of the superintendent is to see what's going on, see how things can be changed, more efficient, less money, all this type of stuff. And so he was noticing that there was a contractor Formosa was given money to. I mean, not money to. They were given the contract to. It was only one guy, and he could say what he wanted. And he was pretty much getting, so the supervisor, he did his research, and he figured out that Formosa would have less turnover, pay less, better efficiency if they did it in-house. And so he sent it to New Jersey, where Formosa USA is, and he got a response from one of the Wongs, Chairman Wong's kinfolks. It said, this contract belongs to a legislator, and we don't want to aggravate him. Leave it alone. And so he came back and saw that. And so he went to the plant manager at that time, or one of the top guys, and I don't know whether I dare say his name right now. But anyway, anybody who knows Formosa knows who I'm talking about. Anyway, so this supervisor, he goes into this very top official at Formosa in Point Comfort, and he says, you're paying off a Texas legislator. He said, "You can't do this. This is illegal." And the Formosa top official said, "How many reports of that have you got?" And he said, "I got one, and I just gave you one." And the guy said, "Well, I can arrange to have you dead." And the guy said it scared him so bad he almost started crying. And he said, "And I used to be a former cop." And he said, "I was terrified." He said, "So I went down, got in his car, drove to the DA in Port Lavaca. The official got in his car, went down to the sheriff's department, both at the same time. He talked to the DA and told him what happened. And he said, well, there's nothing we can do about it because Formosa is buying the sheriff's department an entire computer system."
Oh, wow.
That's just one of them. And there's many that go like that. I've talked to contractors, oh, you don't, I mean, that'll take you all day long talking about the stories.
When you were on the water, was there a point in time when you realized that the plastic pellets were becoming a big problem?
Well, the thing that where I learned about the pellets, like I said, I knew about the plastic because the people in the town were talking about it was just everywhere. It was on your cars, it was in the ditches, it was in the roads, and then I do remember one time I had a worker come and tell me, and it was like, and he was telling about how unsafe it was and how they were just constantly getting him to do these unsafe procedures that were not right. But anyway, he said, at one point, he said, Formosa told him, he said, take this map, this blueprint, and it's like, go and check these sources where plastic is, it's possibly, but it's on the the sheet that's of this document. And so he went and he said there were so many, and there were ones that were not even on the map. He said it was just everywhere.
Oh, so he was doing like an inspection.
He was doing an inspection and to find out where the blueprints were showing that there would be powder emissions. And he said it was not only all of those, it was ones that they didn't even know about. It was just all over the place. And so that was just the powder. And before Formosa became the expansion, it was just PVC powder. When they did the expansion, PVC powder, polypropylene, polyethylene, and they were doing plastic and pellets. And that's when eventually I had one of the workers call me and tell me about he had some information. And I get this a lot. And they want to meet at real strange places because they're afraid of being seen. Because anywhere in this county, or probably in Calhoun County, or probably Victoria County, or probably Jackson County, people know who people are, and it's like they know who I am. And at that time, before I had all this gray hair, I had a lot of black hair. So it was like the crazy woman with the black hair. Have you seen her? And so anyway, I had this worker, and he wanted me to meet him in a beer joint in Rockport. So I drove all the way to Rockport, and it was this lone worker in the corner, and he was very suspicious of me. And he immediately, because I have a bag, I always have a bag, and he immediately dumped out my bag to make sure I wasn't wired and was.
So he thought you were like working for the
yes,
company.
they all are very, very paranoid about because there's this whole history of what Formosa does to the workers, and It's internationally. You can go anywhere Formosa's been, and there's that same type of paranoia. So anyway, he was telling me that he worked in the wastewater at Formosa. So he was seeing all these pellets, but the thing that really caught him was he would take his kids fishing. And he said kids would be barefoot. And he said when they get in the boat, they had all these pellets that were stuck to his feet. And he was like, what is going on here? So then he started really noticing that the pellets that he saw in the wastewater when he was involved in it, and the clarifiers and all of this, that it was in the bay. And so he even, I think at one point, he got a hold of the TCEQ, and he got a hold of the FBI. And he was telling them, well, not only about the plastic, but he was telling them because he said Formosa was manipulating the wastewater sampling, like pouring things out or not doing
recording it correctly.
Well, I mean, just flat out changing it, not just not being real conscientious, but flat out manipulating it, deliberately manipulating it. So anyway, so he went out with the TCEQ, which is the state environmental agency. He went out with the FBI, and they went out to this little island that was, I don't know, 200 foot away from the Formosa's outfall into Lavaca Bay. And the island was covered in pellets. And they took a picture of it. And they never gave him a picture of it, but he knew they took a picture of it. And then nothing happened. And so nothing happened. And so eventually, so that's why he talked to me. And so I started asking questions about it. And I remember I had when Formosa was coming up with their new wastewater permit, I was asking about the pellets. And I remember Formosa said that, and I mean, it was a comment they made to the state that it's in the permit. And if they are losing plastics, they would report the violation. And then TCEQ's executive, he said, yes, if they report it, we're going to give them a violation. And it's like, they had never given them a violation. Formosa never reported it. I had a meeting with Formosa and about 20 of their superintendents of their units, and I looked across the table at a very high official, and I said, do you lose pellets into the creek or the bay? And they looked at me and they said, we never lose a single pellet. We sell every single one. And then he pointed to a supervisor and he said, tell her, don't we sell them? And I'm like, oh, they're such liars. They were such liars.
Well, maybe they actually do believe it because they might punish their employees if there is a spill.
Oh, no. Trust me. Yeah, because when we finally did a lawsuit and we did discovery in their own documents, there was, because Formosa has, and they have their industrial outfall. Right now it's probably around 9 million gallons per day into Lavaca Bay. But they also have 10 stormwater outfalls. Right. Stormwaters is supposed to be the stormwater, the rain, that, and nothing in it, except Formosa has a lot of problems with their stormwater. They got a lot of problems with their pellets in their powder and how it's escaping. And they had documented that stormwater outfall 6 on one day, and this is one day of 27 years that they've been doing this, one of 10 stormwater outfalls that are out there, they had a release of 167,000 pounds of pellets in one day.
Wow.
And then you give that a pound of pellets is 22,000 pellets.
Somewhere around, yeah.
It's unbelievable. And it's like, this was their own documentation. And matter of fact, it was when we were doing discovery, we got all these emails from the units, and they were talking about all the pellets they were losing and where it was coming from. And they said, we've been doing it for 24 years.
Wow.
So yeah, they knew about it. They knew about it. It was just as and I had one of the supervisors of the SPVC unit, which makes specialized, very, very fine stuff, and he said the deal was it was production. Production is the bottom line, and if you're having problems with your reactor and you're having problems there and you get messed up, is like, don't worry about taking care of it, doing the proper way you're supposed to be doing. Just keep production going on. So it was like,
when did you start gaining traction on holding Formosa accountable? Because it sounds like you didn't really get a whole lot of help from TCEQ.
oh yeah. No.
Who helped you the most?
Well, nobody. No, I didn't have any help. I got help from the workers in the plant. Some of the workers gave me information, and then when I started collecting samples on my own, because Formosa said they didn't have them. TCQ said, well, we would give them a violation if they did it and they never reported it. And
so you would go out right by the stormwater?
So I went out to I figured out on my own where the stormwater outfalls were. And I bought a kayak, a $90 kayak, and put it in the water, and I started, it was like an adventure, just looking for them. I didn't know where they were. I didn't know how they were hid, and I didn't know their numbers. I didn't know anything about it, but I just started going out daily and just checking that creek, and I was checking where water seemed to be flowing, and then I would go up on them, and I was tromping all over that place out there. I think Formosa was bringing out the sheriff, and they was bringing out the game wardens, and their security was out there but I was out there in my kayak, and I went straight up their outfalls, and there was like plastic everywhere. And then I had the workers, and we would just walk down to the beach down here, down to the boat ramp. Unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. I ended up I probably got 8,000 photographs and videos.
Wow.
I mean, full videos of the extent of it, and it was huge. It was huge. And I think we eventually, in 2.5 years, we got 2,500 samples and probably 8,000 photographs. And then we found the Texas Rio Grande legal aid, ones that usually you need help getting your rent, with your want a divorce. Well, we went to them, and they became our lawyers. And if you don't have any money, they will do it for free. So we didn't have any money. We're all volunteers, and so they became our lawyers. And when we collected 1,000 samples of plastic from Formosa's stormwater outfalls and from the bay, and we documented it. We had what do they call? I forgot what the word is for it. Where it's totally documented where you get it, when you picked it up, the times, everything, and how it eventually goes to court. And they in 2017 they filed a 60-day notice citizen clean water suit, and in March of 2019 we went to court. We had The workers were witnesses. We had I was a witness.
You had employees that were still working with Formosa?
Yeah, and they were we had witnesses, and they were very. It was I remember that one worker when he got up and talked. He was a shift supervisor, and it was like he nearly made me cry. It was like he was so disturbed. He was so disturbed. And and Formosa fired him. He was making $180,000 a year, and they fired him. And it's like whistleblower protection. None. All of them got fired. They got ostracized. They got blackballed. They got, that's what they got for doing this. And even still, it's like, everybody say, you're stupid to say anything. Keep your mouth shut. It's like, destroying the bay, putting plastic everywhere. And now, see, because we got a mercury Superfund site, the plastic is picking up the mercury. So they're like the vector for pollution all over the bay.
Yeah.
And it just infuriates me.
How long did the trial last?
2 days.
Oh, it was fairly quick. Huh?
Yeah, so it was 2 days. And then the judge, which was he was actually appointed by Ronald Reagan. So he was anyway. So he was our judge, and I think in several months he made a decision that Formosa was liable, that they were a persistent polluter, and that they were the violations were enormous. And they also said that they had ruined the fisheries, destroyed the fisheries out there, and so the lawsuit was into two phases: liability. Were they liable, which they were, and then it was what would be the penalties. And we had figured, we counted everything, and it was only like for the last 2 years. It wasn't like for the 27 years they've been doing it. It was for those 2 years. And we had figured they not only violated it, they didn't report it. So we figured Formosa was liable for $165 million. And so I think after that trial, Formosa was really worried that if they went to trial with that judge, he was going to fine them $165 million. So suddenly Formosa wanted to settle. Oh my God, did they want to settle? And they were going to be real serious. And so, anyway, we had a very serious meeting because our lawyers told Formosa, because we've met with Formosa before, and it was the most crazy dog and pony show you ever saw. But so they sent him a letter and they said, we are not going to talk to you unless you are dead serious. And so anyway, we had this meeting, and normally it's like a whole slew of Formosa suits. It was one Taiwanese American woman. And when I walked into the door, she looked at me, pointed her finger, and said, "You're very persistent." It's one of the best compliments I ever got. And anyway, so, and I think because, when lawyers and you have lawsuits, they're always like, okay, what's the history of what kind of settlements do you get for a clean water suit? And I think they were looking at 250,000, something like that. And so I think, and Formosa, I think offered, what was it, 15 million? And it's like, nope. I remember my lawyer looked at me and I said, nope. And so it was like 30,000, and I was like, 50 million. It's going to be, I wouldn't.
So that's the number you threw out.
Huh?
So that's the number you threw out.
I was fed up with them. 35 years is like $50 million, and we get zero discharge of plastics from their facility, which we got. And we got enforcement from them. We get to monitor them. We get to enforce. And we have enforced on that zero discharge. And at this point, Formosa has violated that permit about 510 times. And we have received $12.5 million in penalties from Formosa.
So that's after the 50 million.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. So
Yeah.
Is there a length of time to where they can, because I thought they had to put in some engineering practices in place in order to achieve zero plastic waste.
That's what they're doing right now. There's engineering stuff going on. There's monitoring stuff going on. There's the WSM wastewater monitoring system, and it was a technique invented actually by we had engineer as a witness for stormwater discharges for our lawsuit, and because she invented a process to monitor Formosa's discharge before it goes to the bay. Because it's very, very, very difficult to monitor for plastic once it's in the bay. But we got a technique, and it's called the WSM, and it's at Formosa, and it's a little building, and Formosa don't like many people going there and knowing about it. But anyways, so it takes 3% of Formosa's discharge before it goes to the bay. It pulls it up, and it takes samples, and it goes through a bag, a really, really tight, dense bag, and so it goes to there, and then it returns to the discharge pipe. It's sitting, the building is sitting right on top of the pipe before it goes to the bay. And it works. And we test them 3 times a week. And every time we test them, it's a violation. And if we tested them 5 times a week, it would be 5 times. It would have been 15 million probably by now.
So is that just off their reactor, or is that just on some random storm? Like, where is that?
No. It's their CWP. It's their stormwater outfall going directly into bay. The 9 million gallons per day. The pipe that goes directly into the bay with the diffuser and all that.
Okay.
So it
did y'all pick that, or did they get to pick where y'all?
Oh, no. The whole thing, it was a part of, because our settlement was what they call the consent decree, and it's all written down, and it's all legal. And if it is not done, you can have dispute resolutions, and you can take it back to court, which has happened several times. Yeah. So Formosa had to work with our engineer to devise this WSM. So they devised it. It took like 2 years to build it. Okay. And they like to be real quiet about, hush-hush about how much it cost, and they're real hush-hush about what the building is.
Well, that's why I want to know where the location is.
Oh, like,
if it's near where they actually do loading, like if they load rail cars, or they...
No, it's right across the street. It's right across. So it's like, it's after all of the loading, it's after all of the extrusion, after all of the packaging, after trains, all of this stuff. It's after everything goes through, and it goes through the wastewater system, which is a new one. And then there is a pipe that goes directly to the bay. And so this WSM was built right on top of it, but it's across the street from the plant and right on top of the discharge pipe.
So that's actually that's a good location for them. It's better for them.
Yeah, and like nobody can go into that without the other party present, and there is a video camera to make sure. And like, for instance, there was I know the the people in Taiwan, Formosa in Taiwan, is pretty upset with that little WSM because
I bet.
it's cost them $12.5 million so far.
How did you tie the plastic pellets directly to Formosa? Because there's other plants in the area that
Well,
make
in
pellets.
Lavaca Bay, the only one there was Formosa.
Okay.
Because there was Alcoa, and Alcoa was bauxite refinery, and they were mercury. Is what their problem was the mercury. So they didn't have plastic. They were they were a refinery. They weren't plastic. And Formosa is the only plastic. And it's a whole bay. It's the Matagorda Bay system.
Okay.
And then across the county, on this side, you've got San Antonio Bay, which is the Victoria Barge Canal, which is Dow, which is DuPont, which is all the other ones. Yeah. So, but and I do know during the court, I do know during the trial, is like Formosa said, well, maybe it's not Formosa, and it's like, there is no other plant in that whole bay system. And it's like, and then you would have to go out and go to the Intercoastal Waterway and go down the slip and then go into San Antonio Bay. And it's like,
is Formosa the one that violates the permit the most? Or are there other chemical plants that?
well, let's put it this way. I have been focused on Formosa the most.
Okay.
And so the thing of it is I do know that, I went down to, I've just been totally, it just takes up so much time. And I went down the Victoria Barge Canal where Dow Formosa was. And I was in a boat and I just climbed off in and one, you just pull the boat up and there was like plastic in the water. I'm like, oh my God, look, and the plastic was just, and the boat stirred it up. And so, and there was, so there's kind of a bluff and then it's got all this grass. And I looked up in it and it was solid pellets. And it was, and we went down the length of it, and it was probably the length of a football field. And probably, I'd say, it went in, I'd say 5 foot.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. And that was, and like I said, I really haven't had and I have turned them in maybe 3 times. And I know Jace Tunnel has turned them in at least once. And I think everybody is afraid to get in the same mind that Formosa is with us, because we kind of got them in a place right now. Yeah. And they have to do it or we go to court. And so Formosa has got, they've got to be zero discharge. So they've tried to stop the stormwater outfalls. That's comes and goes. In the beginning, I mean, it was like, that's where you was really get them. So they made all of these, dug these enormous ponds to contain it. But it's like, they haven't really got the pellets out of the ponds yet. So we've had a lot of conversation with engineers on what they're doing about the ponds.
Is there a date to where they have to for sure be zero pellet waste?
No. When we first did the agreement, we were thinking it was going to be 4 or 5 years, but it's like, I don't know. I know, like for instance, next year, that like when we were doing the wastewater sampling, the monitoring for plastic, is that it started out, what was it, $15,000 per day that they did a violation, and it's also per bay system, where there was the creek that they violated it, and the bay they violated it, and if they did both, then it would be 15 there, so it'd be 30. And so it would start out 15, then it went to 20, then it went to 25, then it went to 30. This year it's 30. And next year it will be, I believe it'll be 65,000. It'll be the max.
So they're getting fined. You're testing them 3 times a week right now, and they're
Right.
getting fined each time.
Every time.
Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Yeah. And so, and they're still, it's plastic, microplastics. Yeah. Microplastics and pellets. Yeah.
Can you talk about, for people that don't or aren't aware of the detriments that plastics causes to the fisheries, the animals, and to the ecosystem?
Oh, I think there is a whole slew of people that are one, I think they don't want to know because in this county, Formosa is the big, and and then Seadrift, and we got Union Carbide Dow right there, and it's like they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it, and it's not only that your son or your dad or your sister or your cousin might work there, but it's also that these companies they're like an octopus. They got their finger in every single thing. They've got it on the banks. They've got it. They've got it. Contractors. They have the mayor of Port Lavaca handles Formosa's housing, all of their houses.
He's retired from Formosa.
Why do they need the mayor to handle the houses? Because half of the citizens, or at least a third of the citizens, left because they were getting plastic in the trembling of those crazy flares that light up the entire county. So they left. So the population's dropped. The school left. There's no elementary school. Formosa bought the school. So that's where they got their training. All of the ranchers, 160 years of a legacy of ranchers. They found the Texas A&M did a study on the cattle and found out their DNA was impacted, and 160 years of ranchers being down north of Formosa, and actually the land where Alcoa and Formosa was ranch land. They are gone. Formosa bought them out, and so they own it all. They're the biggest landowner around, and so they're just they want to build downstream plants and packaging plants. And
what was the first thing you did? Did they give the money to a nonprofit, an organization?
What?
The $50 million?
No. I've the lawsuit is I was a plaintiff in San Antonio Bay Waterkeeper, and that's my group. It's one of the members of the Water Alliance. That's international, and we're just a member. And I filled out the application, so we are so we got the money, but we made a trust, and $50 million went into the trust, and we said where the initial money would go, that we put $20 million into establishing a equitable and sustainable fishery co-op for the fishermen who had nothing anymore. The fish houses were gone. There was no place to get fuel. You couldn't get ice. You couldn't sell your product. You could not even tie up your boat. So it was to try to revive the fisheries in our communities that has been devastated. And we've got 200 Hispanic fishermen that are on the verge of filing with the state of Texas and buying a processing plant, and they will be their own bosses.
Wow.
And so that one I was really proud of. And then we put probably maybe 8 to 10 million into making a park for the county. I think it's one of the largest freshwater lakes in Texas, Green Lake, and to create a park, ecologically friendly for the people to go there and the kids. And then we gave money for free camps to kids that couldn't afford it so they could learn about ecology, stuff like that. We gave $1 million to Nurdle Patrol
Yeah.
because of the work that he's doing, enormous work. So we gave $1 million to him.
Nerdle Patrol is worldwide now.
Oh yeah. They are. They've did and they started almost when we were, I think, right before our lawsuit. That's when I heard about them, and I remember Jace, he emailed me and wanted to get like 400 of our pellets because he wanted to see if they did an analysis, which Noah was going to do, if it was what was showing up on the Gulf beaches, Padre Island, and all that, and it was like 87. They did an analysis, and it was 87% the same thing, and so I've been in contact with Jace ever since, and so we've collaborate and share information, and I've did samples. There's a way to he's got this map where you can how many pellets can you pick up in 10 minutes by hand, and that's kind of how he does it. And then you can report it, you can document it. He's got a map, and it kind of shows where the concentrations are, and it's kind of color coded. And I know I did a sample, and it was like 77,000, and it was like off the charts. And I remember Jay said later, he looked at that and he said, "No, that can't be right." So I think he came down there and it's like, yeah, it's right. It's right. It's like, but yeah.
That's wild.
Kitty cat is looking for a place.
The kitty cat's a little jealous, isn't it?
Yeah, she's looking for a spot. But
can you, from your perspective, we talked about Operation Clean Sweep, and I know companies.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people involved in, and I think there's people that are dedicated to these roles that they have sustainability titles and they really do care about the environment, and they're working on Operation Clean Sweep within these companies. Mm-hmm. But are you seeing any progress from your perspective?
No.
None at all?
No. Well, like, for example, I know I can just tell you one, for instance. I know, and I'm trying to think of there's a group in California that has been trying to ask plastic corporations to be transparent about how much plastic they're losing, and they refuse to do it. And it's like, I believe even in Operation Clean Sweep, is like, I believe they may keep track of it. Maybe they are. We don't know. But does the public get to know? Is like, no. And the thing of it is when these companies are in our communities and affect our bays and the land and the water and the fisheries and the way we live, when they can't be transparent with what they're doing, is like, I think it's probably because we would be upset. I remember one time it was, I remember there was the local paper here. It's like, they had a section, is like, if you had a traffic ticket or you were drinking and disorderly, there was, every day, there was a whole column on, like, who was being arrested, who is this? And I talked to the plant manager, and I said, how come all of the normal people, if they commit any kind of a crime or a little violation, it's in the newspaper, it's printed, our names. And I said, how come every time y'all have a violation or you have a omission, it's not in the paper? And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Jones down the road would have a heart attack if he saw that. He's like, oh no, we're not doing that. It's like, so it's like they, I think they're of an older age, and they better get used to the change. That they think it's their business, the bay's there, the land's theirs, the air's there, and they could do what they darn well please. And I think that's what they think. And it's like, times are changing though.
Are you hopeful that we'll see progress in the near future?
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Oh, you bet. But I think we have to push it. It's not going to be, they are not going to hand it over. I don't know how many famous people I've read that quote. It's like, don't ever expect progress to be handed to you. You're going to have to fight every inch of the way for it.
How do you think we achieve zero plastic waste? How do you think these companies?
Well, that's what we're trying to achieve right now with Formosa, and it's like you find out all the source controls, you find out all the ways that it's being lost, and that you have to fix them, and that you have to be willing to put money into really seriously trying to fix them.
Yeah.
And it's like, in a lot of, I think it would help that the state would start in the federal government would start passing these bills that's what we want, that the EPA should do that the state agencies should be saying that, and that you start. Any new plant has to be zero discharge of plastic, and it would like save Formosa. It would have been worlds better if, because one, they would have known their stormwater. It was a real important thing, and you don't want it going uphill instead of downhill. You want to make sure it's big enough. You want to make sure you've got it where you're not losing plastic all over the fields, and and you got all these source controls in these little places, like I know, for example, there was this unit, and it's where I guess extrusion, they shoot the plastic, except they got these little hinges and they break, and it's like, so there's like 1,000 pounds of pellets here, 1,000 pounds of pellets, and they're like, and I think Formosa fixed like maybe 2 or 3, and there were like 91 of them, and it's like, it is, and so it's, and it's loading, and it's trains, and it's packaging, and it's emissions, like the shift supervisor that I talked to, and he sent me photographs, and it's like 5 stories, and it's SPVC, so it's very, very fine. Is really hard, and even the engineers and even the people in the unit said, well, outside battery limits, inside battery limits is like, it's all the same. It's all the same. It's everywhere, and it's a mess there. And the thing of it is, and so they would be having these emissions, and it would be like a blizzard. And I got photographs of them. You can't even see. You can vaguely see a bicycle back there, and it's like across the road, and it's 5 stories, and it's open, so it's everywhere. It's up on the 5th floor, and that deep in microplastics. And it's like, where's it going? Where's it going? They shovel it out into the field.
A big area in how plastic gets or escapes in the environment is through transportation. So they get loaded in rail cars, they go to customers, and customers don't they don't always empty the rail cars all the way. So when the rail car leaves and it goes back to the facility, it's just dropping plastic the entire way. I don't know if y'all have looked at that across railroads and stuff like that.
Actually, I turned Formosa in probably 2 months ago for that. I had one of the ranchers that took me down there to the railroad track, and I took a video of it, and it was like all the way down. It was like all this plastic, and there was an area we checked, and it was just like everywhere you looked, and right next to it is this huge ditch, and you can see where, and then it had the cement culvert, and the creek was right there. Yep.
Right there.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Very, very much so. And I know Formosa is saying, I even have their memo that it was supposed to be zero discharge of plastic with the railways, and the little caps are supposed to. But, we found the caps all over all over the rancher's property. They weren't on, they were falling off. They were, well, absolutely.
On the rail cars is so old, they break and they pop off, and
there's so many. I think there's so many. I know we were looking at some of the sources where they were losing plastic in the unit, and there was like over 400 projects.
I think a lot of it happens whenever it's being loaded.
Yeah.
The equipment loading the rail
Yeah.
cars are pretty old.
Yeah.
And even during the loading process, you'll see a lot of pellets escaping and not always making it into the rail car.
Yeah, I know
think
there's pictures that show that
Yeah.
that it showed it at the plant like that. You're totally right.
When packaging units, if those are typically inside warehouses, so I think pellets are easily contained if they're going in bags or boxes, because you can. It's inside of a warehouse on cement floor, but I think a lot of it happens outside.
I
and with the
I
rail cars.
totally agree. But there, at one point I even. I guess it was during discovery. It's like when we started doing the lawsuit, they were trying to figure out. It's like, okay, where are we losing it? Where are we losing it? So they did some audits, and I got a hold of the pictures in the audits of what they were, and it was like, yep,
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, the
they were
people that
losing.
are so far up away from what actually happens in the facility, they don't know where it's escaping from.
I know it.
But the operators can tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
The people in the plants can tell you.
Well, I know. Like, I think when we started doing the lawsuit and we started talking about all the plastic that they were losing through the stormwater outfalls, and I mean, it was like when because they started doing the cleanup of the creek now, where they lost all that plastic, and they have these huge drag lines that are scraping all of this. They had to wipe out. They had to get this machine to just level the shrubs, the trees, just. And then they had these drag lines and just drug. And in places they were going down 3 feet to get rid of the pellets.
Wow.
3 feet.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
One thing, I know we're getting short on time here. One thing I wanted to ask you was, did you ever get threatened?
Oh,
when
yeah.
You were going through the lawsuit?
Oh yeah. Well, not the lawsuit in the beginning. And I think that's generally the way it is when people are not aware of what's going on, and newspapers really won't cover it. It gets really dangerous, and that's when they try to bribe you. They try to threaten you.
So you were bribed at one point?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was
shut up?
several times. I was offered. Well, they always try to. Well, one, I think in the beginning they're like, oh, they're stupid. They're nothing. They're hysterical. They're going to go away. They cause a little bit of problem. It's like, okay, how about we help you get your group? We'll give you some money. You work with us.
How much money were you offered?
Oh, they was asking me plenty of money. I never asked, but I'm like, I do not take money. That's one thing I'm very clear on. You're
a strong person, because if they were
well,
flashing...
the thing of it is, that is the main way they will destroy you, will destroy your reputation. And the only thing I had going for me was my integrity. And it's like, they was not going to get me any way, shape, or form. And I even had a long conversation with the Chairman Wong from Taiwan, was offering me stuff. But I was like,
Dang.
and then when that don't work, it's like I had a helicopter land in the front yard and shoot my dog and shoot at the house. And then I had my shrimp boat sabotaged when I was out there, and I nearly sunk with me on it. So
Really?
yeah. And you talk to the workers that have spoken out, and it's like they've all had that. I've had almost all, for some reason, there seems to be a thing about shootings in helicopters. Yeah.
Holy cow. So
Yeah.
did you see it land in here?
It was when I was doing a hunger strike, and it landed in the front yard. And at that time when I was still married, and he had the kids, and it was getting them ready for school. And I was doing a hunger strike in Austin, and I was trying to meet the governor, and I was trying to meet the attorney general and all of that. And that's when it happened. And so they tried to call the cops. The cops wouldn't come. And I finally called him and said, well, we are going out into the weeds to hunt them. And he's Vietnam, ex-Vietnam. So, I mean, he was like, and the sheriff finally come when he said he was going to go out in the weeds, hunting it down himself. And the deputy finally showed up about that evening, later on that evening, and he said that my husband at the time, he said he was a Vietnam vet having a flashback, and that if I ever got sick, he was talking about me, if she ever got sick, we were going to lock her up in a loony bin is where we're going to put her. And it's like, I mean, it's nothing.
What did they think happened to your dog? Your husband shot?
The thing of it is, at that time, I had Greenpeace got a hold of me, and they said, make sure you take the dog to the vet. And so took it to the vet and told the vet that it was shot, someone from a helicopter. And the guy, I actually knew who the guy was, the vet was, and he's actually real fan of Formosa. And he said, that dog hadn't been shot. That dog was in a fight. And we said, pull the bullets out anyway. And with 2 bullets, and then about a week later, he died. The dog died. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like people do not believe it. They do not believe these stories.
It does sound. It sounds really.
It sounds crazy.
It sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But no, that's scary.
Yeah.
Were you ever fearful of your life?
The only time I was really fearful was when the boat was sinking and I didn't know why, and it was already filling up with water, and so I had to crawl down in the water and go under the water, try to find out where it was coming into the boat, because the boat would sink, and I was underwater in the boat trying to find it, and I don't swim. It was not a fun feeling thinking you're under this space, under the deck of a boat, and you're underwater and it's dark and you're trying to find out where the water's coming in.
What keeps you motivated to keep working and keep doing this?
My family's been here 135 years. And this whole community is a fishing community. And the heart and soul of the community was the bay and the fish house and the boats. And when I was real little, like five years old, I would go, me and my sisters would walk with my mother and would go down to the bay when the boats come in. And when I was young, there was an old woman that was down there, and she was at a real feel like a grandmother, and she really liked me coming down there, and I liked going down there just because she was down there. And it was probably a number of years before I realized that a woman that I saw when I was little, she was the bae, and she was so real. I had her essence, and it was personified until this woman. And so I have never forgotten that the bae is real, and that it's alive, and that she was like family. And so I have a real sense of the bae being alive and being family. And it's like, I will not let them have the bae. I won't do it. I won't do it. I mean, it's that ability is one of the best qualities about myself. And so I can't do it.
No. Well, Diane, I appreciate your time. It's been
you totally
had a pleasure speaking to you, and I've wanted to talk to you for quite some time. So thank you for hosting us. And
bet.
I enjoy all the work that you do.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it. And my kids generations appreciate it. So thank you.
You bet. You bet.
All right.
And I hope if any industry hears it, and it's like, I mean, this is what goes on. This is what people in the communities face, and especially people who really get to know and talk to the worker and get documents. And, and like I said, I have not only talked to the workers, the grunge workers, the shift supervisors, I have talked to upper management. And they come because when things go bad in a company, suddenly somebody's going to take the fall for what's going on. And this guy he was going to take the fall, and he said, I ain't going to take the fall. And so that's when I had upper management start giving me information. So it's,
Wow.
yeah, interesting.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome.
right,
You're welcome.
bye-bye.
Totally.